You're listening to 3 Days Through the Wood, a novel by Bear Mawasagi, as read by the author. Chapter 10. A Feast to Remember. Word on the fairgrounds was that the last ferry of the season was leaving at midnight. Pill and Chirp had spent some time asking around, and it seemed that just about everyone had crossed from over the river for the festival, and most of the rest were planning to depart with them. Knowing that Chirp's mother was on the other side of the river, Pill wondered how the two of them had become so far separated, but didn't feel it was his place to ask. It was far easier to change the subject of his thoughts instead. Most of the festival goers were masked now, courtesy of stands and booths and people on corners handing out beautifully carved and elaborate faces, graven images of animals both cute and fearsome. Others were more exotic, of the fare usually limited to the realms of fantasy. A young girl in a unicorn mask was charging down another group of boys wearing carved pumpkins on their heads, and they scattered like bowling pins at her strike. While Chirp had managed to claim a paper-crafted fox mask to match Miss Fox, even adding his own angry eyebrows to it with a smear of soot, smaller and less elaborate fare had been left to the slow and the shy. Those like Pill, for instance. "Why do we have to wear these again?" Chirp asked, spitting through his teeth at bugs trying to crawl into his mouth. Strawberry jam had been smeared around the face of the mask. While it was simply the byproduct of another of Chirp's messy snacks, he had decided to keep it there, thinking it looked like blood. It was also attracting a not inconsiderable amount of flies. "You heard the same explanation I did," said Pill, putting on a spooky voice and wriggling his fingers at the young boy. His own mask was a simple one, being a paper plate with a crude face drawn on, with pinprick holes for eyes. At least with his hood up, it helped dull the bite of the wind. "The masks let spirits walk among the living undetected. There's going to be a lot of them out there tonight." Chirp shivered. "They should have had the festival on a different day then." "The spirits are here for the festival," said Pill. "They're not coming around just because." "Well, who invited them?" Chirp demanded. "How do they even know there's a festival going on, huh? Do spirits eat? What's their favorite food?" His line of questioning went from pointed to pointless very quickly in his typical meandering way, and soon he was listing off increasingly absurd and irreverent questions, speaking without pause and leaving no opening for Pill to interject. After a while, his attention, like always, drifted elsewhere, following the activities of passerby as more and more began to mask. It was a fun tradition, the masks. At least Pill thought so. He thought it was the sort of thing he would have loved to do as a kid. As the sun steadily set somewhere over the tree line, and the first hints of stars began to shine through the growing dark, fires lit along the festival grounds, trapped in lanterns and lampposts and insect shells. Fireflies rose from the tall grass to dance like stars fallen on the earth, and children ran to chase after them. Others ran with sparklers through the streets, battling with them as if they held swords and wands, and posing a merry menace to those passing by as they laughed and laughed into the night. Pill started wondering if he had ever played games like that as a child, but stopped himself. Where before his memories had been hazy and shadowed figures who stood only occasionally in clarity, now they seemed a looming void. Sharp black silhouettes were waiting in the corners of his eyes for him to address them, to acknowledge them. Mr. Scratch had touched upon a truth Pill didn't want to face. He was running from something, and to remember what it was would be to allow it to catch him. He just needed to help Chirp reunite with his mom, he kept telling himself. He could worry about what to do about his own situation later. Maybe that had always been the plan. They had time to kill before the ferry arrived, however, and so they had taken to wandering the streets in search of entertainment. The games alley lost much of its appeal after their run-in with the cheat employed by Mr. Scratch, and neither Pill nor Chirp had been content to sit in just one place after that. They wandered in lazy circles, wider and wider throughout the spread of town, orbiting the great clock tower at its center while catching shows of acrobats dancing on the rooftops between. Singers were plying their trades on the crowd in every corner, clashing in an acoustic kaleidoscope of styles and sounds and songs that battled over the open air. Pill and Chirp had even caught sight of the flying Rambaldi brothers again, who were tossing an alarmingly large amount of pumpkins between themselves from opposing rooftops. Whenever someone would toss them a tip, they would add it to their storm of flying items for a short time before safely depositing it in a pocket or pouch on their person. Sometimes children would throw them spare fruit and snacks as well, and the brothers would take turns eating while tossing croissants and pies and bananas between themselves. As the night settled, the festivities only grew. The bells of the clock tower had been striking on the hour, every hour, and the people cheered with it every time. When the small hand hit 7, the bells started striking at a rapid, frenzied pace that shook the land with their clamoring. The people all cheered with it and started to walk together. "What's happened?" Chirp started before interrupting himself with an odd cry. Explosions of color bathed the sky in light. Stars and shapes and lights of flame flew beneath the moon as fireworks were set off across the sky. Brightly colored animals appeared, and then timed explosions of rainbows, reds and greens and oranges, a bright purple flash to rival the sun, stars that rose high into the air before falling back to earth in 1,000 fireflies. The kids cheered at all of them. Chirp called out the shapes to Pill as if he might win a prize for recognizing them all. Pill let his mind rest in that time, however, finding his own space of quiet between the cheers and booms. He could let his thoughts subside for a short time, let his eyes laze on the show before him, and try to banish his growing worries. Whenever he looked into the crowd now, he would always catch glimpses of the Straw Hat Girl. Her hat was worn by all of the passing farmers, her smile was worn by the faces of the passing children. Her sadness watched him from distorted mirrors. Who was she? That was the thing that haunted Pill now. He suspected he had something to do with whatever he was running from, although he couldn't even begin to guess as to what that was. When he started to wonder about it too much, he focused again on the fireworks, thinking dog, cat, heart, and so on at all the shapes until she was pushed from his mind again. But then she was in the sky as well, filling the space between the stars. And there she was again, sitting atop the clock tower. No one else had seen her. Maybe Pill hadn't either. When he blinked, she was gone. There was a steady oom-pa-pa rhythm creeping in beneath the blasts of the fireworks, drums thundering in time with the explosions of light until they were the only sound that remained after the fireworks finally ceased. The crowd began to bob their heads in rhythm. A long, wailing saxophone pierced the air in a funky sort of dirge that set everyone's feet to moving, and then they were all walking together. Pill turned again to see the clock tower. He had felt a chill too often today, but the one in his heart now was the coldest. He had thought himself safe from the Straw Hat Girl, far away from the secrets of the deep forest and the things Grizzly had cautioned him about. But he was wrong. He couldn't outrun his thoughts. The forest enveloped the town on all sides and was slowly growing closer to them. Sooner or later, he would need to face the wood again. Pill followed wherever the crowd was walking. Wherever they were going had to be better than where he was. Chirp kept one hand held tight with Pill's, and the other wrapped tightly around Miss Fox, who looked to have shared in some of Chirp's jam. It was smeared around her face and neck, proving a grim sight, but Chirp seemed happy enough. Masked and costumed folk flocked to tents and tables that had been thrown up throughout the day. Now there were cooks and kitchen hands carrying large dishes out into the fields, wafting pleasant and alluring scents over the grounds as they laid out 100 feasts at 100 picnic tables. Pill felt his mouth watering. Now it was his turn to hold tight to Chirp's hand because the boy's greedy little eyes were growing wide at the sight ahead. As the crowd split and broke and sat, Pill led them both to a small table where only a few others had sat down. It was on the outskirts of the gathering, but closer to the town side than it was to the forest, and so wasn't quite as busy. He also thought that the table smelled the nicest among them. The others already seated were similarly masked. Some were even costumed. For dinner, they shared the company of an antlered man, a tall and wide-looking scarecrow, and something that might have been a rain cloud. The rain cloud nodded politely, if not with a certain gloom, as Pill and Chirp sat across from him. Glittering streamers fell from his mask as he did so. He was a storm cloud, Pill realized, and those streamers were rain. Everyone gave the other, a stag, plenty of room, because his antlers took up both seats to either side of him, and they looked to pack a wallop whenever he turned his head. The scarecrow watched them all quietly, leaning back listlessly in his chair. Pill thought he was the strangest among them. Not because of his alarmingly lively mask of straw, or even because of the familiar wide-brimmed straw hat perched on his head. No, what drew Pill's eye was that he and the Scarecrow both were wearing what seemed the exact same red and black checkered fleece, complete with hood. Pill worked his fingers nervously through the hole at his sleeve. The Scarecrow did the same. Chirp, unbothered or unaware of the coincidence, had sat down only a seat away from the Scarecrow, who was at the head of the table. Pill took seat beside him. "Beautiful night, isn't it?" the Scarecrow asked with a heavy drawl. His words dripped sweet and slowly from his mouth like molasses from a steel drum. "Wish I could get out like this more often." "Yeah," said Pill quietly.
"We've been out all day," said Chirp. "All yesterday, too. I'm done with outside."
The Scarecrow laughed, slow and deep. It reverberated over the table and set bowls of gelatin to shaking before being lost in the further mirth of the crowds. "Boy, do I understand that feeling," he said. "It takes a lot of work to make a festival, but it's a different thing, isn't it, resting in the field over working it? This is nice, I think. Peaceful."
"I guess," Chirp chirped. "At least it's not raining."
"Oh, it will be," said the storm cloud, gazing into the sky. "Can't you see them, those clouds in the distance? They'll be coming this way soon enough, you mark my words. If there's one thing life taught me, is that there's always another storm on the way." Pill shivered and bundled tighter into his fleece as a cold wind swept over the tables. He was eyeing a heavy, steaming pot of something that the kitchen hands were bringing over. It looked warm. "Suppose we'll have flapjacks tonight?" asked the Scarecrow. "I know they're more of a morning thing, but it's a festival, ain't it?"
"I don't know,"
said Chirp. "It's our first time here," said Pill. "Mine too," said the Scarecrow. "Came all the way from over the river for it. Been fun, I have to say, but I think one day of excitement might be enough for me. Never was the sort for crowds, you understand. Easier to walk a field when you're not bumping into someone every other step." Either he was a farmer or he really liked to play up his costume, Pill thought. He managed to smile, and a thought came to mind. "So you're not from here?" he asked politely. "Do you know many people back over the river?" "Oh my, no," said the Scarecrow. "Not too many, anyway. Like I said, I don't care much for crowds. Same goes for meeting new people." He sat up and then waved his hands apologetically. "Not that y'all aren't swell folks now. Apologies. Seems I just ate my whole boot. I only meant that I usually prefer the quiet life." "I get it," said Pill, nodding. "I'm not used to being around so many people either. I probably wouldn't have come at all if I wasn't looking for someone." "Well, it sure isn't me," said the storm crowd glumly. A sausage slurped into his lips like it was flying up a tornado. "Seeing as I've been excluded from this conversation." "No one's excluding you. You're just too busy stuffing your face to talk," said the stag. He leaned forward to grab a pitcher of gravy set down by a kitchen hand and nearly took the young man's eye with it. "Sorry. Anyway, what you got is a good problem to have. No one should interrupt a man at his eats." "I have to stay hydrated," choked the storm cloud, downing a large pitcher of water to fight down the too big sausage bite. "I'm just saying." The Scarecrow sat forward and leaned to Pill. "Who did you say you were looking for?" he said quietly.
"He didn't," said Chirp. "He's helping me find my mom."
"Oh, gee, that's a real nice thing," said the stag, his voice heavily muffled by a loaf of bread. "Real nice. Good on you, young man, helping the lost young buck find his herd." "You came to the wrong place if you're hoping to find anyone you know," said the storm cloud, pointing out their masks. "I always get here too late. I never find anyone I'm looking for." "Well, she's not actually here," said Pill. "She's back across the river." "What, she doesn't like festivals?" asked the stag. "Maybe she knew it was going to rain," said the storm cloud. "Some folk aren't comfortable in crowds," the Scarecrow reminded them. "Might be new around these parts, too." He looked to Chirp. "You said this is your first time?" "I think so," said Chirp, fumbling with a gravy pitcher the size of his head. Pill helped him steady a thin stream of rich-looking gravy over his heap of chicken and eggs.
"This is all free, right?"
"Nothing in this world comes free," gloomed the storm cloud. "Well, that there is just a poor attitude," said the stag. He held up a small bushel of berries. You see these? The forest just grows them, easy as that. All you have to do is find and eat them. Didn't ask nobody to grow them, didn't pay nobody for them, but here they are waiting for us. The forest doesn't charge a cover just to live, you know. No, but you pay in other ways, said the storm cloud. You have to face the bears and the wolves and all the giant cats whose names I get mixed up. He smiled meekly and somehow looked even sadder for it. I just call them all kitty. Sure, the berries might be free, but it took effort to get them. Someone had to brave the woods and bring them back and set them at the table. Nothing comes without a price, and that price always comes due in the end. The stag sat silently, stared at the berries in deep contemplation, and then ate them all in one large bite. There's always someone willing to pay, though, said the scarecrow. Why else do we work the fields when we can't possibly eat everything we grow? It's so we can feed others, to help them on their way. The price is always paid, sure, he nodded to the storm cloud, but not always by those who reap the reward. Pill felt like the conversation was about more than just simple foraging and farm talk, and so decided to just sit back and nod politely while the others spoke. Chirp was nodding as well, but his brow furrowed in attempted understanding.
I thought food just happened, he said, looking at his plate. It's there, so you eat it. There's always stuff growing in the forest, and people are always throwing away stuff, too. Why would they do that if it's so hard to get?
The scarecrow, stormcloud, and stag all nodded in agreement with them. Smart kid, said the stag. They expect things to always be there, I think, said the stormcloud. No one ever wants to notice the hard times waiting over the horizon. If you've never worked the field yourself, you don't always realize just how much it takes, said the scarecrow. Chirp thought carefully about that, and seemed to very much savor his next bite of chicken. Pill caught him muttering a small thank you as well, but he wasn't sure if it was to their dinner companions or to the dead bird. Pill looked to his own empty plate. While the others had quickly stacked theirs up, he didn't feel much like eating. I think you all kind of got it, he said. We take things for granted because we don't know how hard it was to get them, and we fool ourselves into thinking things will stay that way forever. But things change. People change. The world is always changing, and all we can do is be ready for it. The others nodded at that. Even Chirp, whose cheeks were stuffed to burst with chicken, was nodding vigorously. It's kind of like the seasons, Pill continued. We wake up in the spring and life starts to grow. We sow and live it all summer and reap the rewards of our work in the fall. That's what this festival is about, said the scarecrow. But winter comes too, said Pill. We prepare enough through the year that we'll get to see another spring and then maybe give the whole cycle another go. Sometimes we think that the sun will stay out forever, but the cold always catches up. I think people just forget about that sometimes. Winter and cold meaning bad times, I mean. The storm cloud took another large gulp of water. Life can't stay good forever, he moaned. But it doesn't say bad forever either, the stag reminded him. You can't discount the good for the bad. Or the bad for the good, agreed the scarecrow.
I think this is really good, said Chirp.
This time he was definitely talking to the chicken. So, the scarecrow said to Pill, you were saying something about helping this boy find his mama. You two aren't family? No, said Pill. I just kind of found him in the woods. The storm cloud tutted. Terrible, he said. Actually, it's more like he found me in the woods, Pill clarified. I was sleeping in a bush at the time. Great place for a nap, said the stag, clapping. His plate was packed into a small collage of the feast, with a small sampling of everything there was to be had, and he grabbed a bit of everything all at once with his fork. Hardly anyone bothers me when I sneak off behind the brush for a quick one. How do you find you?
I thought he was a frog, said Chirp.
An easy mistake, said the storm cloud. And you two have been together ever since? Asked the scarecrow. Pretty much, said Pill. We had a hard time finding town at first, but there was a man who gave us a ride and another woman who gave us directions. There were other people too on the way who helped us, so we made it all right. But what were you doing out there to begin with? You're so young, the scarecrow wondered. Then he shook his head. No, it's not my place to ask. Boys roaming the woods is a story old as time. I'm just glad you found your way through all right. He turned to Chirp. You been away from your mama long?
A little while, said Chirp. A couple days, I think.
But you'll see her tomorrow, said Pill, once we cross the river. The Scarecrow, Stormcloud, and Stag exchanged a look with each other. Cross the river? They all asked together. You go over that river tonight and you ain't coming back. You know that, right? Asked the Scarecrow. Last of the season, said the Stag. The ferryman warned us on the way here that we better not miss our ride back. Says there's gonna be a storm, said the Stormcloud. I hate storms.
Then why are you dressed like one? Asked Chirp.
I heard once that you should dress as the thing you fear the most, said the Stormcloud. Make it a part of yourself so that the fear can't hold power over you anymore. He sighed. They say it's better to face your fears rather than run from them, but I haven't been able to see my reflection all day without jumping. Thunder boomed somewhere in the distance. A few of the children must have thought it was another firework because they started cheering. There you have it, said the Stormcloud. I shouldn't have said anything. The world doesn't work like that, said the Stag. Things don't revolve around you, you know, and storms don't come along just to spite you. Besides, there are other things that like the rain, like flowers and trees and all those little berries in the woods. What comes will come, and we just have to be ready for it when it does. I wasn't ready for any of this, said the Stormcloud, gazing to the distant wood. At least it's not coming from the ferry. Hopefully the night's over before the storm gets here. No doubt about that, said the Scarecrow. He licked his finger and set it to the wind. Probably won't be here until sometime tomorrow. Maybe after the early sun, maybe longer if we're lucky. But that's not rain out there, it's snow, and snow and thunder is never a good pair to be facing. I expect the ferryman's right. That journey over the river tonight is going to be the last of the season after all. He shook his head, then looked at Pill and Chirp. But that brings us back to the two of you, don't it? Son, you better be sure you want to cross that river with the rest of us, because there won't be any way of coming back.
Pill was thumbing through the end of his fleece, wearing the hole even wider.
It's not that I want to go, he said hesitantly. It's just that I have to help Chirp find his mom.
And she's on the other side of the river, the Stag repeated. He leaned forward to think. You know, that reminds me of a puzzle I heard once. There's a fox, a chicken, some grain, and a farmer, and he has to get them all across this river, right? But there's only one little boat that can only fit two of them at a time. There was something about the fox eating the chicken if left alone. Chirp let the bones fall to his plate in a loud clatter, licking his grease and gravy-soaked paws as he did so. How is everyone going home if the boat can only fit two people?
Different boat, Chirp, said Pill. One's a puzzle and the other's a fairy.
I don't like fairies, said Chirp. Mom says they're tricky, and they try to fool kids into doing stuff they shouldn't.
Different kind of fairy, Chirp, said Pill. This kind of fairy is just a boat big enough to carry everybody.
So, no wings?
That would be a surprise, said the Stag. An unwelcome one, groaned the Stormcloud. I hate flying. I never liked fairy tales either. They all ended too happy. Not the old ones, said Pill. The real ones. My mom used to read them to me, but she had to stop because they were getting too scary. I couldn't even sleep anymore because I had nightmares about a witch throwing me in her oven and baking me into a pie.
Pie sounds good,
said Chirp, patting his stomach. Not when you're the main ingredient. Do you belong over the river? Asked the Scarecrow. I know you said the boy's mama's over there, but what about yours? The thatched straw face watched Pill impassively, giving no hint as to what he might be thinking. There ain't no way back across once you make that journey. If you realize once you're there that it's not where you're supposed to be, it'll be too late to turn back. The Stag and Stormcloud both nodded. Pill bundled himself tighter in his fleece. All around him, the other tables were sharing in laughter by lamp and lantern light, looking bright and warm and happy as they all chatted together under the rising moon. They all looked so comfortable, so why did he suddenly feel so cold? I can't just send Chirp off by himself, he said quietly. You won't be alone, said the Stormcloud. That boat is so crowded you can hardly find space for yourself.
Won't even be the only child riding alone, said the stag. I saw a great herd of them running through the fair. Look, there they are.
He pointed to a few tables far on the other side of the feasting grounds, where several packs of children had taken several more tables all to themselves. It looked like a war zone of food, but their laughter carried across the night. Everyone finds their people on the other side, said the Scarecrow, and there'll be plenty of folk to look on him until he does. What kind of a world would it be if the herd didn't watch for its own? Asked the stag. The Scarecrow chuckled with the same molasses drawl as his words and leaned slowly back into his chair, tipping his hat back so he could watch the stars. He lifted his mask partially, enough to reveal a thick, unshaven stubble, and bit into a mouthful of flapjacks. That's a nice fleece, he said, nodding to Pill. Warm, isn't it? I'm actually pretty cold, said Pill, who was shivering in his seat.
Really?
Chirp asked, surprised. He was tearing into a thick pie with his hands and picking through the filling to get his favorite bits out first.
I think it's nice out,
he said. A very pleasant evening, said the stag. Could be better, said the storm cloud, watching distant flickers of light on the horizon. Storm won't be here for a while yet, the Scarecrow reminded him. Not till long after the feasting and dancing are done with. We'll be long back by then. You sure about that? The storm cloud asked nervously. The stag just laughed.
There's a dance?
Asked Chirp. Every year, I'm told, said the Scarecrow. I never was much for dancing myself. 2 left feet, they said. Might be I'll give it a try next year, though, he said, patting his stomach. Far too full tonight. Never hurts to try something new, though. It could hurt quite a lot, actually, the storm cloud complained. I can think of a dozen bones I could break trying to dance. In fact... Pill tried hard to focus on his plate, too tired to keep listening. He had ladled servings of mashed potatoes and chicken and sausages, sprouts and asparagus, toasted broccoli and cauliflower, and he warmed his hands over the steam now rising. It helped to drive the chill off slightly, but his fingers still felt stiff. My daughter used to do that, said the Scarecrow, chuckling to himself. Treat her meal like a campfire, I mean. Could never get around to just eating.
Scarecrows can have kids?
Asked Chirp.
Does that mean she's a scarecrow, too?
The Scarecrow's soft chuckle rose to hearty laughter. Not if she's as smart as I think she is, he said. And she is smart, believe you me. Smarter than I ever was. Nah, I expect she's got the sense to be anything she pleases, and I'll bet she aims higher than standing in the same fields as dear old Dad. I preferred a sunny field to a rainy one, said the storm cloud. The stag tried to lift his glass and toast, but he had drunk too deeply and quickly. Red wine brimmed over the top of his glass and splashed onto his neck and chest. Oh dear, he said, giggling. It seems I've made it rain on myself. He tried to grab a napkin to clean up, and his antler caught on a pitcher of gravy. It went splattering across the table. Oh dear, he said again. It's a downpour. Everyone hastened to clean up. Always preferred my bread with a little gravy, said the Scarecrow, grabbing a roll from the center of the flood and mopping up with it. Chirp followed suit and took a roll from his plate to dip on the table. That can't be sanitary, said Pill, reaching too late to stop the boy's hand. It probably ain't, said the Scarecrow, nodding to Chirp. But it's nice to see someone who knows the value of food on the table. Best not let it go to waste. Sorry, everybody, really, the stag said, still laughing. Just a little accident. My pie is covered in gravy, the storm cloud moaned. Aren't pies better with gravy? Not this one. It was cherry. Pass it here, said the Scarecrow. I don't mind a little mixing of the fixins. Either you boys want a piece?
Yes, said Chirp.
Yes, please, Pill reminded him.
Pill wants some too.
Actually, you can have my plate, said Pill. Better to not let it go to waste.
Aren't you hungry?
I thought I was, but I guess not.
Thank you, Pill.
Nice to see young folk keep in mind of their manners, said the Scarecrow. My folk really hammered that lesson into me. I tried to teach it easier with my own kids. Never had the heart to be harsh with them.
Where are your kids?
Chirp asked through a mouthful of cherry and gravy pie.
Are they here?
Pill sank back into his seat. He wished that Chirp would stop asking so many questions all the time. He just wanted to sit in silence and wait for the ferry to arrive, but the hours only seemed to be growing slower as the day went on, and it was getting so cold out. They're with their mama, I expect, said the Scarecrow, biting into another stack of pancakes. Would that I could be with them now, but we don't every time get what we want. Pill didn't think he knew the Scarecrow's story, but he could recognize sadness when he heard it. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I wish you could be with them now. I appreciate that, said the Scarecrow, but I'll find my happiness in good company until I see them again. He raised a glass. The Stag and Stormcloud both joined immediately, this time more carefully on the part of the Stag, and so did Pill and Chirp. Pill made sure that Chirp only grabbed water. To good company. To the things we take for granted, said the Stag, filling his cup to the brim. And the things we don't, said the Stormcloud, draining his cup half empty.
To good days and good food,
said Chirp, who had to stand on his chair to clink glasses with the others. They all looked to Pill. What did he have to toast? He was alone, on the run from his memories, and unsure of where that road might actually lead him. Chirp looked at him eagerly, and the two friendly boy who would soon be traveling off to the other side of the river smiled encouragingly. Pill wasn't sure he could follow after him. The words of the harvestman came to him in that moment, and he turned to the others. To the things we love, he said, and to finding them again.